Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Data Talks with Lauren. This is a show where we talk about emerging trends in the data world to enable people to stay informed. Now in today's episode we are going to look at AWS architecture, services that can be used when you are dealing with a data project. AWS in full is Amazon Web Services, and this is a cloud offering vendor that whose services people can leverage when they're doing a data project. So at this point we will be looking at the different sections, that is from sourcing data, what you can be able to use when it comes to orchestration and etc. In different segments, and the different services that are offered in those different segments. In today's episode, I'm joined by an AWS certified solution architect who is going to walk us through these services. At this point I'd like to welcome him to introduce himself. Karibu.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Yeah, so my name is John Alawaye. I am a business intelligence manager at Saku Gas Group, and over the years I've been working with different technologies to implement data solution in terms of sourcing the data, ingesting the data into storage, and then process it, and then for business to make decisions using this data.
Correct.
Yeah, so today we'll be looking at AWS services that we can use in delivering the data projects. So that's who I am. Back to you, Lauren.
All right, thank you. Welcome once again, Yemi. So at first, what are some of the services that are available when you're sourcing data the moment you're now in the Amazon Web Services environment?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think when we talk about sourcing, let's start from the source system. I believe that is what you're talking about. And these storage systems, we have many of them within Amazon Web Services. We have the likes of DynamoDB. We have the likes of RDSs, different services. In fact, they also allow other vendors like even SQL Server to be, implemented within their own infrastructure also.
Yes.
We have the Aurora, we have RSS Stream can be a source when we are dealing with data projects, and other flat files also can be source system within this data project.
Yes. All right. In terms of the source systems like Amazon RDS, Kinesis data streams, and DynamoDB, could you highlight what the different source systems do?
Yeah, okay. When we talk about this source system, it's like I also didn't mention S3, which is one key, can be a key source system within the Amazon, environment. So this source system, basically, like we mentioned, storage.
Yes.
And for them, they have different lifespan, different use cases. For some, it's just for the meantime, short period of storage. For some, it could be a long time storage that you can even set what we call life cycle, the data life cycle on them. For instance, S3.
Yes.
We have the hot storage, we have the cold storage, we have the archiving, and this all lot of settings that you can leverage when we talk about the storage. And when you talk about RDS, this is a system or the database that we are using to store data that we are collecting from maybe different applications that we are building. So it could be any form of storage, but it's residing within the Amazon environment. Yes.
Okay. So now we have moved from the source system. We're moving into ingestion stage. What services does Amazon offer in regards to ingestion?
When we talk about the ingestion layer, Amazon have different ingestion services that we can use.
Yes.
One of them, which is common, is the Glue. Glue is very common, and then in Glue, it gives us the opportunity to bring our own custom code. The way we want to, when we talk about data project, we are trying to solve a business we are giving to solve a business problem. We want to give a solution to the business, right? So with this at the back of our mind, we set up our code just to, from where we are sourcing this data and things like that. So we have the glue, we can use glue, we can use Lambda, right? We can use Lambda, we can use DMS. And when I say DMS, I mean data migration service within AWS. And we have this snowball that we can use to do heavy bulk loading of data from maybe even on premise into the Amazon environment, So these services are what we use, and I'm speaking about this based on the architecture, we have there, that these services, we can use them. Some of them actually, they are like DMS, easy to implement. You just do some few settings and you get the data flowing into the other stage, wherever you want to store it. But when you talk about things like Lambda, or what choice do I have between using Lambda and using glue? Here comes now the kind of the runtime. How long will it take for this transformation that I'm doing? So that you avoid the runtime error. So I think Lambda has 15 minutes max limits. If the runtime is going to exceed that, we have to, probably use a glue for that for that solution. So these are the services you can leverage within for ingestion within AWS.
All right. Then when it comes to storage, because after ingestion, you've sourced the data, you've ingested it, and then now you want to store it somewhere. So for that bit, I know of data lake that can be used in AWS. What other services are there, and how best do we decide which service to use at which point?
Yeah, good. That's a good question. And when it comes to the data lake, basically from implementation, we're talking about the S3.
Yes.
Because it allows us to store different type of data. Flat files in different formats, right?
Structured and
unstructured data, images,
voice,
MP3, and this actually is what we refer to as the data lake, because it allows us, gives us the flexibility, like when you want to implement, for instance, the source system, when you could save the data, for instance, let's say in a CSV format within the data lake. You could transform that data and save it in a package format. You could save it in different other formats. So at this stage, in the storage, we are talking about S3. You could proceed to say, oh, we don't want to store this data in S3. You could store it in RDS, depending on the solution you want to offer to the business, and what exactly do you want to achieve? You could even process this data and channel it into another streaming service, that could further put that data, if, for instance, the solution requires real-time, use of that data to make decision. I mean, you would not have to do a storage first before proceeding, so you can just channel it directly into services like Kinesis Stream, and then again you proceed from there, and then you could store it in a DynamoDB, that has maybe a lifespan of maybe 24 hours for the data to fade away, and then a new load gets in. It could be in different kind of ways, depending on the solution you want to prefer, or whatever solution you are giving to the business to solve that business problem.
I like that you mentioned the streams bit, because it reminds me about IoT, which is something you need data to be constantly monitoring maybe a certain thing, and you need that data to be real time. So in that case, now you could use the stream services, right?
Correct. Correct. That's absolutely correct.
Okay. So in regards to transformation of the data, how do we go about this in AWS services?
I mentioned that we could use Lambda.
Yes.
Even in those transformation, but majorly from projects that I've worked with, I tend to have worked mainly with glue services, where this data, the code based on the business logic. You bring in your code, it could be in Scala, it could be in Python, but of course, I think Python is what is commonly used. Okay, for myself, I think Python is commonly used, and then you transform this data right from the, maybe you have a staging area within still the S3 itself, and then you transform that data based on the business logic. You could transform it and store it in a packet like I mentioned earlier, and then the transformation bit, for me, basically it could mean anything that suggests, or logic that suggests the solution that we are trying to give to the business.
That's true.
For instance, you could merge several tables from these source systems. You could merge them together within your, within your either your PySpark or your pandas, different kind of, in your data frame, everything. You prepare that data before you store it back into that into your S3 in whatever format you're comfortable with. And then now you call on services like the crawler, to crawl this data. After crawling the data, you could either you have your databases that you could store this that and the data catalog that could store the schema of this transformation that you have, and then analysts, scientists could now leverage SQL skill that they have already within Aena to be able to ask question of this data, to be able to now answer the business questions, or to be able to actually deliver what solution we are trying to give to the business at that point.
Okay. Now that you've mentioned analytics, because the next thing we're moving after storing the data, after transforming it, we're going to the bit of, first of all, orchestration, right? And then onto analytics, correct?
Correct.
So for orchestration, do you have any additional services that which you have not covered but you need to mention?
Yes, because when we talk about transforming the data, most of the time it's not a one-off thing. You transform, you need to automate the process of this the data pipeline. You need to automate it, and when you need to automate it, you call on services like Event Bridge. You need SNS, these simple notification services to help us orchestrate this whole process using the step function. Step function also help us to orchestrate. Okay, after this process is done, then run this process. After this process, then run this process. So we are able to organize the steps that the data transformation will have to go through within the pipeline. And step function is a very good service for this purpose.
Very good. So now moving on to the analytics, because myself I've used Amazon QuickSight, and I liked it because it has a couple of different. First of all, I liked it because of the drag and drop. There's no much calculations that are being done, because I believe through the entire process that we've covered and those services that you've mentioned, it's like we've covered a lot of the logic that the business needs to satisfy the analytics bit. So I think that's why probably I like Amazon QuickSight, but maybe you can tell us more about that and other analytics services or reporting services that can be utilized.
Considering Amazon has like different services. And within these different services, you will notice that they have other analytics services within it. And even I think there's an analytics service within Glue itself that could be used to do some visualization to understand how the data fits. As a data professional, at every point we check what can we get out of this data. What is this data telling us? And this can actually be answered at any stage of the data. Even when you are cleaning the data, you could be able to see something is not making sense, and then you could be able to retract your step back and see what correction can be made in terms of that data. And when it comes to analytics, yes, QuickSight, like you mentioned, I also like it. Because most of the work to be done with QuickSight, you have to do it at the query level.
Yes.
You know, you would have done many of the business logic within the query level.
Yes.
So the lightweight stuff is what you do within the QuickSight calculated field and all of those. But bulk of the work would have been done within the query level. And then if you actually want your report to be faster rather than doing a direct query, it would be better to actually run the logic within a query, maybe view, create a view for instance, and then you load that view into the Spice. You know, after you've loaded that query into the Spice, it makes the report very fast and it's taking off the stress. Okay, let me use that. The stress of the query being run on use, you know. So what with Spice, it gives us that flexibility and it makes the reports run faster.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in regards to Amazon SageMaker and Aena, could we talk about that?
Yeah, Aena is a tool that is like an interface for us to be able to access our data within S3. So when we store that data, of course we have stored the data under a certain database. Then within that database we have different tables, right? So within this on these tables we can be able now to do just like every other normal databases that we query. We can be able to write a SQL query against this database, against this the database. Underneath is S3, you know, but you can be able to write now direct query, your normal SQL queries against this data. And SageMaker is actually going to give us that flexibility of running some kind of machine learning, you know, capabilities on top of this data also. So it gives us these services, they give us flexibility to work on the data that we've stored in our S3. And I think they are good services. It makes the work a lot more faster. It gives us that that flexibility of enjoying what cloud could deliver in terms of data data projects or data solution, as the case may be.
All right. So as we come to a conclusion, because we basically talked about the services. So someone who is watching this and has heard about these services wants to now start the journey to Amazon Web Services. How could they get started? Where could they get the resources? Maybe a link, maybe in their websites. Maybe could you point us to that direction?
Thank you. I think Amazon, many people that I've actually worked with, many people fear even getting started with Amazon because they have loads and loads of services that you just feel like it's overwhelming. But you don't have to feel overwhelmed. I think if anyone would like to venture into AWS, the first thing for you to do is, and they have good resources by the way, if you go to their landing in their portal, AWS, Amazon services, you see the landing portal there where you can get free learning resources that you can use. And again, let's leverage the YouTube. You go to YouTube and you see so many services there. And again, one other thing I would like to add is for you not to be overwhelmed, I think it's important for you to also choose a specific niche within this service. Like now we've mentioned data. You can just go to their web, their portal, and check what are the services within the data, the group of services that we can use within the data architecture, stuff like that. It gives you that opportunity to start knocking them off one after the other. For instance, you could talk about the storage services, you could talk about the data ingestion services, talk about the orchestration services. We could talk about the monitoring services, which I did not even mention, the CloudWatch and stuff like that. But one thing is, go one step at a time. Try to understand the cloud itself generally, what is it about, and then you pick, you narrow in into one section, and then you'll be able to demystify what AWS is. By the way, it's not difficult.
Really?
Yes.
I was one of those people who were, AWS, But over time, I've come to start appreciating, like the way you're saying, I started with quick sites, so now I'm moving into, let me see what else I can do with AWS. And then over time, maybe I'll be preaching AWS like the way Amy here is doing. So any other thing that you'd like people to know before we conclude?
Yeah, I think for me, I appreciate what you're doing to make people understand what data is. And many people will think it's difficult to venture into data maybe as a data engineer or as a data analyst. Yes, of course, it takes a whole lot of consistency, effort, persistence. For you to be able to, settle in. But the moment you settle in, it's again very difficult to get your hands off it.
Yes.
So that is one
because
thing
you get addicted to solving data problems.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy. I really truly appreciate you creating time to be here to educate us about Amazon Web Services. And for the guys out there, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and learn more. Not only AWS, we had another episode on BI, data analytics, and some of the steps that you could take during this journey. We have so many topics coming to you every week. So please subscribe to Data Talks with Lauren on YouTube. Follow me on LinkedIn, Lauren and Ubare, and still related to the same information, and on Twitter and everywhere else. Amy, where can people find you? I know you're big on Twitter. Please give your handle. Yes.
Yeah, you could actually find me on Twitter.
Yes.
I'm also on LinkedIn.
Yes.
On LinkedIn, John Olaoye, and on Twitter, J.A. Olaoye.
Yes.
You'll find me there, evangelizing on S03E06. And subscribe. Remember to subscribe and to support Lauren on this good effort that she's putting out there to talk about data. Yeah, thank you, and I hope to come back again to talk about more the services.
We will figure it out a day at a time, a service at a time. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Yeah, bye.